coming, but you will be late.
Thank you. Mrs. Barnett?
Here. And we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, we'll ask for a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. And Dr. Freeman, it looks like you're up first with the monitoring report.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, those of you in attendance in person and online. Tonight, we're reviewing progress of the district from last school year, 23-24. Just like we, at the last meeting, reviewed the annual financial report from 23-24, this is the progress on goals for last year. And this data will be helpful to the board in evaluating the district's progress, and as we move into the spring, helping to inform all of the things that the board's going to do to set us up for the 24-25 school year. So I'm doing the introduction, and we have divided the report into the 6 guiding principles, which we call the post-pandemic presentation. And a lot of you will remember before that we went through all 14 goals chapter by chapter. So I do want to point out a couple things that are in the introduction that I think are of note. One, of course, is the acknowledgments. The first time we did this report, I wrote most of it, and the last time I'm going to be here doing the report, the staff has written most of it. And so I have to say that I'm impressed and pleased with the ownership the team has taken over monitoring goals and helping make sure the district moves forward. So key to that, of course, are the executive team, Dr. Haid, Mr. French, Ms. Garrison, but also Ms. Musil and Mr. Budsman played an integral role. All of us would be struggling to get our work done without our assistants, and some of you may have met or know who some of those people are. Of course, Ada Sillis next to me is the team captain. Gabriella Ballinger, who's new in instructional services, Kalia Edwards, who works with Mr. French in the business office, and then Rosa Martinez, who's kind of picked up what I guess is almost like a hybrid assignment when we married everything together when we reduced the size of the org chart last year. Rosa had been with the person who left, and Sue migrated over from instructional technology, so Rosa Martinez has always been involved, but playing a more integral role now supporting Ms. Garrison. We want to note the context in which the report is written, and like I said, we're calling it post-pandemic. The pandemic years were uniquely characterized by a lot of executive orders, federal intervention. Since then, we've had extraordinary inflation. We had a retreat with the board in 2019, and since then, we've had the pandemic and inflation years. So the 5-year trends and everything that we had projected then really don't apply, and were dramatically different in 22-23. So that's the year preceding this report, but it's the data we use to work on the 24-25 school year. One of the other things that we wanted to point out is divisive and disruptive polarizing politics nationally, state and locally, including universal vouchers, disparate support for charters, have made it more challenging to manage the district. Our latest count is that about 1/3 of the K-8 students in the Littleton boundaries are attending somewhere other than Littleton. And we'll talk a little bit about that. We do want to reference back to the mission, vision, and guiding principles. Those are aligned with governing board policies A, regulation AR, and the 14 goals are in policy BA. And we have that on the agenda to address at the end of the meeting. The management team didn't change any goals, but we did feel like recognition fit better with dedicated and caring staff under guiding principle 4 than it did under highly effective organization in 6. So we're going to ask the board about just shifting that around, not changing any of the content, but the organization, and having that for your consideration at the next meeting. So this post-pandemic format is a little more streamlined. It doesn't include everything that's been measured. It includes highlights, things that moved, or things that were important. And so the data's been reformatted a little bit to make it more presentable and interesting. One of the big challenges still facing the district is the increasing shortage of teacher candidates. We thought last year between classified and certified, we had roughly 10% of our employment openings, a little more classified than certified. We're a little better this year. There's probably 1 or 2 teaching positions still open at each school, which would amount to, 5%. And when you're hearing on the radio that 25% of the positions are unfilled in Arizona, we feel like even though that's a challenge, we're still better off than some other districts. There are some districts, I think I saw in a report today, maybe 1 in 5 that are doing okay with teachers, and if we're better than average, that means somewhere there's 1 in 5 that are worse than average. And so it's challenging in Arizona right now to get help and good teachers. We also had, you might remember, an election to join WestMech, the CTED. They have helped with our signature programs. We had a big infusion of funds from ESSER, which we had to expend by the end of September this year, but heavily influenced last year and created some opportunities for programs and for teacher retention. And we opened the new Lake and Prep Academy. And that was a big challenge to get everything finished, especially the electrical service system, because the one that we had originally spec'd wasn't available. We had to redo the whole electric engagement, and so we had a lot of people scrambling to get that done, and we had extraordinary cooperation from SRP to get out there, and we got a red tag first, fix some things in a green tag. Our main thing was to get the air conditioning up and running so we could cool off the school and dry out the concrete. For those who aren't familiar, the guiding principles have governing board goals associated with them. So students learning has a goal for curriculum, differentiated instruction, and mastery. And mastery is where we report on state and district scores of proficiency, and we have multiple measures that help us do that. In a safe and orderly environment, we look both at the safety of the environment and the safety of behavior. In families as partners, we look at the partnership engagement of family members, particularly parents and caregivers, but we also look at how effectively we're communicating with our parent community. So that is both an ingoing and outgoing measurement. For dedicated and caring staff, we look at the quality of staff and staff retention. We look at collaboration that happens in the district to help assure we have best experience for our students and our staff. And we added the goal from Section 6 to Section 4, where we're recognizing people and programs as part of dedicated and caring staff. So it's the same goal, it just moved from 6 to 4. In a meaningfully involved community, there's 2 goals where we look at community resources and promoting our programs. And then in a highly effective organization, we look at leadership and core values, as well as the alignment of our staff and our program and our resources to maximize our effectiveness and support our growing organization. So really quick overview. We use a monitoring cycle. You heard when your Ray and Associates representative came and talked about the Kerr governance model. This is adopted from that, and it's a cycle of monitoring goal progress And where it looks like a cycle in a circle, it actually is a series of overlapping and interlocking circles. The top part of this model is board activity. The bottom part of the model is management activity. So each cycle starts with the board setting priorities and resources. The management team implements that, and then at the end of that implementation, you come out and evaluate how you're doing. So we are right now in 2024 at the evaluation phase of the 22-23 school year. We're in the middle of the 23-24 school year, because we're in the middle of the 24-25 school district right now, or school year right now. So we accomplish annual and long-range planning by looking through these goals and strategies and projecting ahead. But one of the challenges we found, of course, is a lot of the context of public education in Arizona today is decided by the legislature and other agencies. I often joke with my colleague superintendents who had 10 and 20-year plans, which year they put the COVID pandemic into their 20-year plan. And which year did they put the Red for Ed walkout in their 20-year plan? Were they a year early or a year late, or did they forget to include it? So this model allows us to be a little more agile than that, flexible, but also keeps us forward-looking all the time. There's a graphic on page 6 that kind of shows how these cycles weave together. We are in the 24-25 school year. We are in the fall of that year, so we are looking at data from 23-24. That's the green box on the bottom. We're going to use the 23-24 data to begin setting goals and resources for 25-26 when we get back from winter break. Once those goals and resources are set, we'll be wrapping up the 24-25 school year, and we'll use that data to get ready for 26-27. So there's always a little bit of a 2-year gap between governance work in review and governance work in implementation. In the meantime, the management team is running the school in accordance with the board's 14 goals. External influences play an important role in our effectiveness as a district. One of the issues that we have is increased cost that comes with students with special needs. And most of the people on the board are familiar with how the school system budget works. It's based on enrollment, but there's a series of different weights for different grades and different ages and different special needs. One of the challenges that's arisen is that the cost to cover these additional services isn't really matched by the weight. The study prior to the pandemic showed that special education was underfunded by $250 million. And I can only imagine with the inflation we've seen since the pandemic that that's not a much bigger number today. We usually rely on historical trends to anticipate changes, and we use demographers to help us with that. Estimates of enrollment have been made more challenging because of state level policy, charters, STOs, and ESAs, and cultural shifts, political, pandemic, and generational. One of the things, for instance, our demographers are paying attention to is birth rate. But one of the things superintendents around the state are paying attention to is capture rate. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. Part of what the problem was, people have heard about the aggregate expenditure limit. In 1980, there were 2 laws that passed. One was a constitutional referendum to limit spending. That's the AEL that you know about. It impacts all subdivisions of government. And then the other was this very sophisticated finance formula with offsetting levers that kept the school districts running in a balanced fashion. At the time, there were no vouchers or charters. One of the first things the legislature did was remove the cost of living adjustment. And ever since then, the state has fallen behind in the value of the dollar allocated to public schools. You know, from sitting on the board and passing budgets, we've been able to give 2 or 2.5% raises when inflation sometimes was 9%. So that's been a challenge for us. They switched carry forward caps, referendum funding, current year count for some components, of the formula, which has made everything more challenging. Here's round numbers of some of the data we were able to collect over the course of last year. Probably some of the biggest influences were seceding a square mile north of McDowell to the Pendergast district. That precedes my tenure here. Kathy remembers when that happened. The opening of Legacy Charter School, and when that opened, Collier was actually able to beat them in test scores for 3 or 4 years, but as their enrollment settled out, they were able to capture more and more high-achieving kids. We think between 600 and 700 kids from the district are attending that school. The Math and Science Academy across the street probably only captures 300 to 400. That changes because they come and go. Some go and come back. And then we have students who have addresses in our area but are attending school in one of the surrounding elementary districts. But we also have kids attending school here who have addresses in surrounding elementary school districts. So the net difference in that is about 100. But the total impact is roughly a third of the students who reside here are not being captured. Big influences on that were, like we already mentioned, vouchers, charters, but also the extended school year was when we saw a big shift of some people looking for alternatives. And then, of course, staffing shortage makes everything harder to do when you're shorthanded. And the alpha generation, which are students born between 2010 and 2012, now are 10, 11, 12 years old, so they're making up a bigger and bigger portion of the school student population. Roughly 8% of kids for years and years used to be qualified for special services, special education. Today in Littleton, that's 1 in 5 instead of 1 in 12. We think some of that doesn't have to do so much with the water as it does with people who are exercising school choice are more likely to be families with kids who don't need those additional services. We traditionally have been really good at providing those, and other places don't. The problem we're having today is securing staff and services and having to outsource a lot of that. Our free and reduced lunch rate dropped a lot during COVID, and we think that wasn't because families got richer, but because they weren't connected by all of the forms and registration. We were giving out meals in bags of 5 to families, and so there was a lot of free meals. I think when the government went back on enrollment, there was a drop both in SNAP participation and in free and reduced lunch participation here, but it is climbing back up to where it had been historically. I think as more and more families get online, of course, the pressures of inflation and that kind of thing. We hear a lot about food insecurity, and that's our best way of tracking its impact here in Littleton. Addition, probably in summary, policy decisions, demographic shifts, shortage of staff, governance discord have all contributed to challenges in managing the district. So what we're going to do now, Madam President, as long as it's all right with you, we want to shift to the first guiding principle, and I want to introduce Dr. Haid. She is going to go over the data in the booklet in Principles 1 and 2. Mr. Verrill is going to try to follow along on the monitor for people who are listening online. And what we'd like to do is present the contents of the book and then stop with each guiding principle and see if there's questions. We're going to be taking notes as we go. You probably have noticed that Dr. Jamie Cole is up at the dais. She's also been given instructions to listen carefully to your comments and write them down, because sometimes as we're presenting, it's hard to present and listen at the same time. And so she has an opportunity to meet everybody here, to see all of the boards sitting at the dais, possibly to gather her own insights, because at the November regular meeting, she's sitting in this chair and helping President Reyes facilitate the meeting. So she's been here a week and 2 days, and she's on a really steep learning curve, but she's taking it all in like a champ, and has had a chance to get out and get around and meet a lot of people. We're trying to take her through a scheduled calendar of events, and she's got amazing questions and really good questions too. So this is part of her induction to be up front and have a little interaction with all of us. But she doesn't have a job on the agenda yet. That'll be next time. She'll have a lot to do. So if it's all right, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Hayden.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I have the privilege of presenting Chapter 1 this evening. Most of the data in the first chapter you've actually seen, so we're going to review a piece of that. As Dr. Freeman said, last school year we made significant strides by opening our 8th brick and mortar site, Lakin Prep Academy, while maintaining an online option. This expansion provided the community with more educational choices, with Lakin Prep Academy focusing on international baccalaureate and dual language immersion for grades K to 2. So I'm going to have you flip to pages 4, 5, and 6, where we're going to start talking about common goals. You had an in-depth presentation in August of this by Mr. DeLacio, but to review this, during it's our second year with district-wide goal-setting initiatives, and most schools successfully met their goals, showcasing the positive impact of focused leadership. Some schools refined their objectives to better reflect actual student growth, and the district utilized core and supplemental materials aligned with pacing guides and teacher-tailored lessons to student strengths. We had professional learning communities, facilitated collaboration on instruction and assessment. So in 23-24, the district focused on 3 guiding principles: effective teachers and instruction, and this principle was divided into K-3 literacy and 4-8 math. And you will see the individual goals on page 5 of chapter 1. We represented the graphic slightly different than you saw it with Mr. DeLacio in August, but the information is the same. The district achieved an 83% success rate on these 2 goals, and we look at, it's not perfection that we're looking for, but if we score between 80 to 100%, we consider that having met the goal. If you turn the page, the second goal was effective organization of time with a focus on our PLCs, our professional learning communities, and this goal was met with 100% attainment. You really can start to see how our work with Solution Tree has started to take root, as we saw 2 of our schools make A's, and they are grounded in that practice. So that is represented at the top of page 6. The third goal, family and community engagement, concentrated on chronic absenteeism, and this goal was also met with 100% attainment. Additional information on this particular goal will be shared by Mrs. Garrison in Chapter 3, but I wanted to keep the focus that our 3 goals actually allowed us to achieve, which is what I'm going to talk about now. These goals were aligned with the superintendent's goals, and we had all staff with department, schools, and whether support, admin, or teaching staff were collaboratively focused on achieving this impactful and beneficial outcome. On pages 7 through 9, I'm going to review the first, all of 7 and part of 8. Littleton recognized achievements through daily interactions and district-wide events, offering opportunities for student participation in activities like spelling bees, math challenges, and STEM competitions. And governing board meetings provided a platform for recognizing students and volunteers who exemplified the Kids at Hope belief system. Moving on to pages 9 through 11. Here are our achievement profiles, and this is the first time the board has been able to take a look at these. They're actually going to be made official at close of business on Friday, and there'll be some individual schools updates on letter grades, which you did hear when when the schools presented their IAPs in October. September. But I'd like to just say with the improvement, our GPA moved from a 3.0 to 3.15, raising the average to a solid B. That's the chart that you see at the bottom of page 9. You might notice that that's one less than 8, which is the number of brick and mortar schools we have. Because Lakin will not get a letter grade assigned to them until next school year. So in next year's monitoring report, you'll see, but their achievement would have allowed them to earn a letter grade of a B this year. So that is a point to make. We always look at achievement profiles when we're comparing our district data to the state data, and that starts on page 10 and ends on page 11. So the achievement profiles indicate academic progress with the, we have verified our scores with the cut scores, and we think that the State Board of Ed and the letters, we don't have any reason to appeal this year as we did last year, so we're confident that that is okay. Proficiency rates on AASA increased slightly in both ELA and math, allowing us to close the gap between the district and the state. We're not exactly running a sprint, but we are solidly moving into the direction of winning the marathon. So Littleton was the only district among the Tolleson Union High School elementary feeders to maintain or increase proficiency in both subjects. So I thought that was quite an accomplishment to share with the board, as we've always focused on student achievement. If there are any questions at this time for this particular chapter, I'd be glad to try to answer those or point them out or take notes. Thank you. Moving on to Chapter 2. I'm going to have you flip to page 3, and this is an overview of some of the safety measures that we have in the Safe and Orderly Environment Principle. Of course, it's our priority to maintain a safe and orderly environment where students, staff, and community model appropriate social behavior, common courtesy, and good citizenship. We have several safety tools to protect students during their commute. These include surveillance cameras with audio on buses and the Zonar system, which tracks student entry and exit using ID badges. Zonar also provides drivers with real-time mapping and turn-by-turn directions. The Register to Ride program improves efficiency in student routing and reduces the number of routes if possible. And it's important to note, despite a driver shortage, the district successfully provided transportation for all students, including after-school sports and activity routes. Emergency preparedness is also a priority with crisis management program. We collaborate with local agencies, including the City of Avondale, Avondale Police Department, Phoenix Police Department, and Desert Drug Dogs. We continually upgrade our partnerships and our systems. We successfully applied for several grants last year, including one from the Department of Justice that enhanced our server storage capacity and video feeds at each school. Last year, we were also able to implement Crisis Go, which is a comprehensive crisis alerting system. We had some schools pilot vape detectors to combat the rise in illicit substances, and the district's property and liability coverage was managed by Arizona School Retention Trust again. On page 5, this will show how our safety measures are impacting our students directly. So the chart on page 5 illustrates the number of students who received out-of-school suspensions and the corresponding number of school days missed. Some of this will also be looked at more in depth with Chapter 3 with Mrs. Garrison. Administrators have become more adept at implementing progressive suspensions, therefore avoiding overly harsh punishments. And the data suggests that our processes have been effective in reducing suspensions as grade levels collaborate to support student behaviors. Although the legislature relaxed restrictions on suspension for K-4 students, the overall number of suspensions decreased compared to the previous year. So even though the legislature allowed us to suspend more students, we didn't. So I thought that was a highlight. Middle school students accounted for our most severe disciplinary infractions. And despite an increase in enrollment, violations in weapons and dangerous items category decreased by 30%. Talked a little bit about our upgrade and safety measures. It's also important to note that there was a 50% increase in improper use of technology violations influenced by a change that enabled administrators to receive immediate light speed alert. And this allowed us to address issues with students, either with mental health or their discipline, in a more rapid time frame so that we could address them at the lowest level so that the discipline was at the lowest level to correct the behavior. I'd like to switch to page 6 and talk a little bit about social workers. I know that we had a wonderful presentation by Mr. Meacham who came, but they play a crucial role in supporting our students in the district. We've had 7 social workers last year funded through local and grant resources. They, along with school leadership teams, identified and supported students struggling with their well-being. They had 500 more contacts than the previous year. They used social, academic, and emotional behavior risk screener, also known as SABRS, 3 times a year to screen all students and identify those at risk for social emotional behavior problems. Throughout the year, 202 students were classified as high risk, and the social workers contacted all of them. Students in grades K-8 who fell into this category met with them at least once in each assessment period, so that is 3 times a year. We also continued to use All Things EQ, a supplemental resource that taught character development and leadership skills. This program helps students show up positively for themselves and others, contributing to their academic success and overall well-being. I'm happy to answer any questions the board might have at this time.
Questions? Comments? I just have one question, if I can go back to page 11, and I'm sorry I didn't ask it sooner. That, and if you don't know...
Chapter 1.
Yes, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry. It's on the ELA proficiency levels. So can you explain why 21, 22, 22, 23, and 23, 24 showed absolutely no growth or no... I mean, it might have been 18, then 19, but it seems odd to be so stagnant for those year spans, and if you need to research it, it's fine. I just think, to me, it sends different signals, but I don't really know the reason why.
Be glad to look over that and bring that forward.
Thank you.
Preliminarily, I would say that other districts experience the same, so it could be a multitude of things, including testing, but we'll bring that back
Appreciate it.
next time.
Thanks. Doesn't seem to be questions, so it looks like we could move on to chapter 3.
Mrs. Garrison.
Sorry.
No, I would just make a comment, point out one thing, Madam President, because we've talked about the increase in digital issues. That's a nationwide phenomenon with kids and online resources, and so it's something that we're paying close attention to because, of course, it does affect anxiety and mental health and a bunch of things that way. So sometimes it's discipline, but other times it's help.
Thank you. So it looks like we can move, oh, did you, I'm sorry.
Wasn't there a change in the format of the test during those years?
Yeah, you can
that-
see if you look at that graph, the state went down, but Littleton didn't. So sometimes when you change the test, you're not really able to compare year to year, because if you make an easier test or a harder test, it can change the score. And like, until you do a reference, to something else, and then I think like Dr. Hayes said, we'll examine more deeply, and we'll probably get into peer comparisons and all that when we go forward. But we don't have all this data on comparisons to the state and other schools yet. We only have ours. So
No, that's good. To me, when you say proficiency, if you're not going up or you're not going down, it tells me something's odd in the data. So
yeah, the
we'll wait
problem
for
is
the
there's not a
answer.
standard. I mean, the thing with testing educationally is like water freezes at 0. That's a standard. What's it take to be passing the state test any given year? Who knows?
Well, I just asked because I know I'm at the high school level and we're doing testing this week. And so last year we administered the pre-ACT to our students and it was a paper-based test. This year we're administering and it's completely online, totally new platform. So if we're gonna compare last year's data to this year's data, it's gonna look different because of the platform being totally different. So
Would it be the same?
No, when the state did,
That's what I wondered.
so
when the
I just
state
wonder
did
what that-
K-8, paper scored better than online.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
They could be different kids. Yeah.
All right, so we're moving on to chapter 3.
Madam President, Governing Board, Chapter 3 is about partnering with and engaging our families. Strategies include providing opportunities for parents to monitor progress, exchange information in a timely manner, and model excellent communication and customer service skills. We all know how important the role families play when it comes to success of their children, so we continue to work on building those relationships. Last year, staff across the district committed to improving attendance, and additional resources were put into place to support the goal, as Dr. Haid mentioned earlier. Following the pandemic, schools across the nation saw an increase in chronic absenteeism. So I'm going to ask you to flip to page 3. And Littleton, so we saw it across the nation, and Littleton was no exception. If you look at the chart on the top of page 3, you'll see that when compared to the previous year, all schools saw a reduction in chronic absenteeism. We're excited to report that the schools ranged from a 3 to a 13% improvement, and this was a result of consistently tracking the data down to individual students and connecting with the families to understand barriers and that we're keeping our students from coming to school. We continue to celebrate the students, of course. So while we're doing that, we're identifying those kids, but we're also continuing to celebrate the students who typically have exemplary attendance. And this year, last year, we also celebrated the improvements we saw with the individual kids because we were looking at the data that closely. Our leadership teams are to be commended for working diligently to understand the data and to design the interventions to improve attendance, which, as the data shows us, improves achievement. So, right, get them there, get the achievement up. We are encouraged by this data and are committed to continuing this work. This is also a big focus this year. The next chart right underneath there shows the number of parent portal logins over the past 4 years, reflecting a steady increase driven by a deliberate plan. Parent View has been available for over a decade, and we focused on encouraging greater participation by continually adding features that make it more convenient for families. In addition to the usual tasks like monitoring grades and attendance, parents can now update allowable over-the-counter medications, contact information, request request their program, their other school, during school choice window. We use it to acknowledge the parent-student handbook, view report cards, and request transportation. Those are things we've layered in over these years, trying to give our parents more and more reasons to go to the portal. Our online families use the portal weekly to submit attendance minutes, which are then reported to the state. This data is promising and helps us reduce paper usage, and we will continue working with parents to find new ways to enhance Parent View's functionality and support the transition to high school, where, as Member Contreras can probably tell us, it's expected. Our families are expected to go in the portal, so we're trying to get them, have that same expectation. If you flip to page 5, you will see comments about opportunities to engage. Last year, the principals and their leadership teams reimagined curriculum nights, totally changed it up. We're inventing new ways to host it, and they saw significant increases in attendance. The parent advisory group continued to meet with the superintendent, which provides an open forum to exchange information. And of course, we always continue to get more volunteers to support our schools. The picture you see on this page was definitely a highlight from last year, and I know some of you attended. This was our English Learner Parent Night. People came together to celebrate cultures with interactive activities and performances. And our adult English class even performed, if you remember, and got to practice their English. And it was held in this room, and this room was jam-packed. An amazing event that I wanted to make sure that I highlighted. Questions on this chapter?
This isn't so much a question, but feedback on Parent View. I love Parent View, and I think last time I asked the question, how often should parents be logging in? And you quickly corrected me that I'm not logging in enough as a parent. But I do want to know, on Parent View, it makes it look like I can email all of my kids' teachers, like at one time, which was amazing. And then I spoke to my kids' teachers, and they said they don't get those emails. So maybe we need to look at that and either allow it or not have it there, because I think that could be confusing for parents. I thought I emailed all of them to say, hey, my kid's not coming to school, can you, this next few days, can you send work? And my kid's teacher said they never receive reply emails from Parent View. So,
So,
no, no.
no, so I am aware of that issue, and I will put it in a future update. It was a result of an update from the vendor, and it was turned on, and we were not aware. So we are looking into whether that is a vehicle that, we want to move forward with. So thank
if
you
they-
for noticing that.
If we can't do it, that's fine. I just think it could confuse parents.
Right.
Like, when did that happen? It happened probably last month. Well, I told her teachers. I told her teachers, and they said they would pass it on. And I just
No, my
I try
data
to follow
team-
the chain of command. Like you go up.
I was teasing.
My data team brought it to my attention last week, so I know exactly what you're talking about. So thank you.
But it lets you like check mark who you want to send an email to, which I thought was great. Like so convenient. I could send one email to everyone.
Well, our communications expert is here. We'll let everybody know we're working on it, because sometimes saying nothing is worse than being wrong. Yeah.
Any more questions?
And remind is an awesome way to communicate. If there's if there's no more questions, I'll turn it over to Mr. French, who's going to present Chapter 4.
Thank you, Ms. Garrison, Madam President, members of the governing board. Chapter 4 of the monitoring report is on Principle 4, which is competent, dedicated, and caring staff. This year, Chapter 4 includes District Goals 8, which is district attracts, develops, and retains highly competent staff. Goal 9, which is employees work in a collaborative manner to provide a quality educational experience for students. And Goal 10, which is people and programs are recognized for their excellence. The management team used 7 strategies to interpret this goal, and they're listed on the first page of Chapter 4. Page 2 provides the management observations and analysis for last year with regards to Principle 4. This provides a high-level analysis of the chapter and touches many of the programs the district implemented or continued during the year to attract and develop quality staff, both instructional and operational. Some of these programs included the Grow Your Own partnership with NAU, the Spanish Embassy partnership that brought teachers from Spain to teach at Lakin Prep, and the focus on bringing other international teachers to Littleton to address the teacher shortage. Pages 3 through 6 address Goal 8, which is the attracting and developing and retaining highly competent staff, and goes into much greater detail than the introduction on page 2. Page 3 highlights the district retention rates of teachers for the last 5 years, which is 13% higher than the national average. The management team feels like the 91% retention rate for last year has to do with many programs developed for staff to feel confident in their jobs. The district expanded the Grow Your Own program with NAU, growing enrollment in the pipeline to teaching, 26% between the fall of 23 and the fall of 24. Of the 34 students in the program, 69% identify as minorities and 75% are first-generation college students. The district also recognized that teachers are not the only hard-to-fill positions the school districts now have. Because of this, the district also expanded the pipeline to teaching program to a pipeline to administration program. This program will help the district identify our future leaders and help mitigate any effects on our students if administrators leave the district or profession. The district also worked hard this last year to expand the professional development program. While the curriculum and instruction department continued to coordinate and implement the professional development for certified staff, the classified staff program started its first year with the human resources department at the helm. The management team felt like these two groups' needs were different enough to warrant the change in the responsible department. Page 7 provides information on the district's continued commitment to professional learning communities, or PLCs, and common planning time for teachers, and correlates directly to Goal 9, which is employees work in a collaborative manner to provide a quality education experience for students. The district celebrated 2 schools, Quinton and Littleton, that received national recognition for being model PLC schools. Quentin is in its 4th year of this distinction and must show clear evidence of improved student learning annually. Common planning time was identified by teachers in perceiver data as an important factor in resolving obstacles to student learning. Pages 7 and 8 touch on our last goal in this chapter, which is Goal 10. People and programs are recognized for their excellence. I just wanted to say that there are many things our staff can be recognized for that are not included in tonight's presentation. We'd probably be able to fill up countless pages of this report if we did. The one thing I do want to recognize for this section is Dr. Freeman's ASA State Superintendent of the Year Award. This award recognizes not only Dr. Freeman's contribution to the Littleton community, but also education in the state of Arizona. Madam President, that was my overview of Chapter 4. I'd happy to answer any questions you have.
Questions? Hearing none, we'll move to Chapter 5. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Oh, just a comment. For the demographic by ethnicity, I think I would like to see, I love that we included like of the whole entire staff, but I think if there could be like a chart of like the leadership, like administration and the staff next time possibly. That's something that would.
Demographics by
yeah,
leader.
demographics by the teachers. Oh, no, just to be in the monitoring report, like to be public information, like more public, I guess.
We can work on that, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn the presentation back over to Ms. Garrison for Chapter 5.
Thank you, Mr. French. Madam President, Governing Board. Guiding Principle 5 includes strategies to involve community partners in the educational process. We're always looking to increase our presence in the community, and last year we had some really unique opportunities that help us do that, so I'd like to highlight a few of those. One, the billboard, prominently located on Avondale Boulevard and MC 85, continued to display good news from our district and help us get partner information out to our community. Last year, we introduced a community-created brochure, and your communications team worked with various stakeholders, including the Community Connections Committee, PTA members, Underdown Junior High alumni, and Cash and Has Heart to bring the concept of a piece of promotional collateral to life. Mr. Budsman and I had fun seeing the pages morph as we met with the different groups, and they weighed in, and things did go in and out quite a bit. And as these groups weighed in on what should be included in version 1. So on page 3, you'll see a few pages from the community-created brochure, and we anticipate having another version in the spring and look forward to adding a staff recruiting element. So we want to add some pieces to include more reasons why people would come to work here, why it's fun to work here, good to work here. If you turn to page 4, you'll see a narrative titled Festival of the Arts. Now, where we provided opportunity for our students to shine was a beautiful example of utilizing our community resources. Our amazing student artwork was on display in the lobby of the Avondale City Hall, and our musicians, dancers, and singers from across the district came together at the Tullison Performing Arts Center to perform for family, staff, and community members, and it was really amazing if you attended there, and what a great place for the kids to be able to use such a professional venue. It was awesome to see. The Welcome Center continued to provide resources to our community, and one highlight on the next page at the bottom was our partnership with the VITA Tax Group. 232 free tax preparations were done in the Welcome Center this last tax season. So our 13 skilled volunteers, it's all volunteer work to come in and prepare taxes for qualified families, helped community members to get just over $368,000 in returns last year. So I really wanted to highlight that. That's been going on for a couple years, but it is amazing what happens there. If you flip to page 5, you'll see another highlight. Our transportation department participated in the APS Light Parade. They dressed up a bus and themselves and rolled their version of Santa and his reindeer, and both kids and adults were excited to see it featured on TV as the parade is televised. So we got to see our bus go by, and the transportation personnel reported hearing people from the crowd, "That's my school, that's my school." So that was something I wanted to highlight. On the last page, nurturing a strong sense of community has always been at the heart of the district's efforts, and last year provided a perfect example of how we continue to foster these connections. When district leaders learned that a group of alumni from Underdown Junior High was planning a reunion, they didn't hesitate to offer their old gymnasium as the venue. In case you were wondering, this is their old gymnasium. The reunion brought together former students from the 60s, 70s, and 80s who gathered to reminisce and share their memories. Through these stories, district leaders discovered just how deeply the school had impacted their lives and the community, learning about traditions, friendships, and achievements that still resonate today. It was amazing when we came in and sat with them and just listened. Another group that exemplifies the spirit of community is Cash and Has Heart, and I know many of you are familiar with, a local organization dedicated to supporting our neighborhood. Leaders from this group not only provided valuable input for our community brochure, but also worked hand in hand with the Littleton alumni group when a tragic fire struck St. William Church. Their collaboration showed how in times of hardship we can come together to uplift one another. So these moments illustrate that we are truly better together, and there's no better way to conclude this chapter than with these powerful examples of unity and collaboration. It's your turn. Yep, I have mine. I did too. So we're going to go back to Mr. French to present the final chapter, if there's no questions for me.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the governing board. I am excited this year about Chapter 6. We were able to pare it down from 25 pages to 15. So I'm very excited to present it to the board this evening. Chapter 6 of the monitoring report addresses Principle 6, which is a highly effective organization. This year, Chapter 6 includes District Goal 13, which is leadership and core values are modeled and monitored at all levels, and 14, which is the district effectively aligns people and programs to match the need and resources of our growing organization. The management team used 8 strategies to interpret this goal, and they're listed on the first page of Chapter 6 for you. Page 2 provides the management observation and analysis of last year with a brief description of some of the leadership challenges and successes. Page 3 begins with perceiver survey data the district collects annually. The management team pulled out 3 relevant questions that tie back to the leadership of the district, with 1 question each from the teacher, student, and parents groups. All 3 questions showed growth and an upward trend, suggesting an increased confidence in the leadership's commitment to fostering growth within the school and the district. If we take a look at page 4 and 5, those pages provide a list of leadership roles that district employees hold outside of the district. The management team believes having employees involved in organizations like these strengthens the leadership of both the employee and the district. Jim, if you move to page 6, we could take a look at, page 6 provides a graphic of the organizational chart for FY24. After the departure of the Executive Director of School Leadership, it led into the process the district undertook with rebuilding leadership on page 7. This action was extremely important because the core values of the district were threatened by certain behaviors of leadership, and trust needed to be reestablished. The district was able to start this work using tools and strategies learned by the work with companies like the Pacific Institute and Aspire Consulting by Design. Page 7 also begins the analysis of Goal 14, which is the district effectively aligns people and programs, by providing a history of recent elections held by the district. Last year, the district held a maintenance and operations override election, which allowed the district to exceed its state-imposed budget cap by 15%. This was critical for the district and allowed the district to continue to provide the programs to the students and the level of compensation to our employees. This district has a history of strong support by the community, and we hope it continues into the future. If we move to page 9, Jim, the management team provided an analysis of student enrollment growth since COVID. We see that weighted average daily membership of the district has not only recovered, but surpassed the pre-COVID level. Management is seeing weighted membership grow faster than regular membership, meaning our Group B weighted students, which are our special needs students, are driving that growth. The district will continue to monitor this growth as the district typically spends more on the services for these students than that are provided by the state. I think Dr. Freeman alluded to that in his introduction. Other items I wanted to highlight in this chapter start on page 12. If we go down to the pictures, Jim, it shows the beautiful renovation completed on the Boys and Girls Club facility here at the Underdown Learning Center. Page 14 provides a graphic of the amount of dollars by fiscal year the district has spent or has received in competitive grants. The bulk of these competitive grants were awarded to the district for the expanded preschool program and to fund certain social worker positions in the district. Lastly, I would like to highlight the last graphic on page 15. This is a representation of the district's expenditure by function for fiscal year 23, which is the most current information in the Arizona Auditor General's Dollar in the Classroom report. The district spent 56% of every dollar on direct instruction, which is 2.6% higher than the peer district average. Grouping student support and instructional support into that calculation, which the Auditor General does to determine dollars in the classroom, accounted for 72% of spending. So for every dollar the district received in funding, 72% went to the classroom. Madam President, that was my overview of Chapter 6. Be happy to answer any questions you have.
That's also higher than the state average.
Absolutely, yes.
Is there questions or comments on that item, that chapter?
No comments, just I don't know if we had enough time, but maybe next year highlight the solar, because we're going district-wide solar. I think that'd be good to highlight to the community as well, because I think it's something we should take pride in. A new big thing, I guess.
Madam President, members of the governing board, members Sinisteros, I think it will definitely be next year's report since we haven't started the process yet and we were reviewing last year's highlights. That will be well underway this school year, so we'll address that next year, definitely.
What was the deadline to be energized? I thought it was like a year from now.
We're looking at next December.
Yeah. So probably the groundwork will be laid in this year. The actual energization will be in the next year. That we do get confused sometimes. We're writing this in 24, 25, but we're trying to remember 23, 24. It gets
Confusing. So if there's no questions, it looks like we're going to have a discussion on the first reading of policy BA, which is school board operational goals.
Yeah. Jim, if you would, oh, wow. Look at that. It's like you read my mind. Okay. So this isn't a big change. There's a couple things I would point out to you. One is if you scroll down to C, you can see that as we go through different administrations and state board members and superintendents of public instruction, college and career standards are now called academic standards, so it's an opportunity for us to fix that name change. It wasn't done by us, it was done by outside agencies. If you scroll down then to letter J, which is K, all right, so all we've done here is reorder these. So if you look at the very bottom, which was N, is struck through, that becomes J, and that changes its position in the goals to move it up a little higher so it sits within guiding principle 4. And then you have to renumber the letters going down. The other thing is this is not adopted tonight, it's proposed tonight. So that's a technical question. So the only substantive change, and really it's not that substantive, is the name of the academic standards done by an outside agency. And then we just reordered them because we thought it fit better with the guiding principles in the presentation, but we didn't change any goals. If there's any questions about that, I'd be happy to try to answer. If there's not, it'll come back on consent at the November meeting.
Is there any concerns or questions?
No well, I guess it's kind of a question. When we had our, could have been a different thing that we reviewed for our goals. I could have swore didn't we break down our 14 to 6 or 5? I think in earlier this year.
Madam President, Member Sincero, so we had 6 guiding principles, and we talked about 5, and then in the discussion, it was that they said the same thing, but they just tried to mash it into 5, and so the 6 remained. Those were the ones that were similar to the content discussed at the retreat. So that didn't go from 6 to 5. These sit inside of those. And then the other is just to remind members, because Dr. Kelly went through some of the data, the priority goals that you set. And one of the things that was interesting in our discussion and review of this, we were talking about, you remember when professional development was a hot topic for staff?
She wanted to remind you.
Oh, did I say something wrong? Oh,
She showed
sorry. You guys, you know, it's so funny.
She showed you her rate, that's all I'm saying.
This is a sidebar. The superintendent in the Madison district is Dr. Kimberly Guerin, but she taught kindergarten for me when she was Miss Spielar, and I still call her Miss Spielar all the time.
Well, so noted, we see that.
So noted. Okay, I'm sorry, my apologies. So the teachers, you remember we had professional development goals for a couple years, and they wanted their prep time to go to the copy machine. Now they value their, when we went through the data, they value their collaborative time together in PLCs because they're seeing success with kids and with each other. And so that shows up in that data, and that's part of the priority goals the board put together in the teachers working together. And of course, it's attached to their incentive money. So it's been a big help, I think, in helping teachers improve instruction and pedagogy, and probably something that we should continue. So 3 priority goals with 6 guiding principles broken down to 14 goals that have strategies attached. I'm not sure how you would crosswalk all of that, but that's how it fits together.
Oh, I move us to adjourn at 7:03.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.